Hello! I finally got my camera fixed. The quality on this one should be much better than the last one. Um, Welcome back to a new episode. In the last episode, we kind of went through how to create an element. How to create an element in preact, and we went down a rabbit hole of a bug. I learned the difference in how arguments work in strict mode and non-strict mode in JavaScript, which was pretty interesting. At least I thought so. Today we will get into the code some more and try to learn about, I think, the diffing algorithm of preact. I'm really excited for this one actually, and let's dive in. The render function had a create element. We saw that vNode is basically just an object that has type, props, children, and a bunch of key, ref, and a bunch of other things that we have still not used. Hopefully we'll use it going forward. So let's look at this diff function. The diff function was at least the parameters that the diff function took was a bit confusing to me because they all seemed the same. To recap, basically it takes the actual DOM object and it takes the children object which is the vnode. It takes the old vnode, but it takes an empty object again. It takes a boolean of whether this is SVG or not. And then there's again something to do with that old vnode, replaced vnode or whatever, which I'm not sure what. It takes the commit queue from here, and again it takes the replace node for some reason, and takes the actual is hydrating boolean that we computed here. So it's a bit confusing to me why it wants the same thing in different ways. I'm hoping I'll understand more. So the diff function should come from this folder here. It has a bunch of things inside it. So if I look at the import, it comes from diff index, and that is here. Seems like a meaty little function which does a lot of logic. It also imports stuff from the children, from props to diff props and diff children. Needs a bunch of utils. Where are the utils? Utils are here. Let's just look at the utils. Assign. This is, I think, copying objects. Copying to a new object, I think. Assign properties from props to object. Remove a child node from its remove node. Remove a child node from its parent if attached. This is a workaround for IE11, which doesn't support element prototype. Remove using this function is smaller than including a dedicated polyfill. Looks at the parent node. If parent node, then it removes the child node. This is the old way in which we used to remove nodes. That's simple, that part. So that's that. So let's look at this diff function. So export function diff. So like we were seeing here, it needed the parent DOM, which is cool. It needs the new vnode, but it assigns that to the parent DOM's children and then takes it. This is the vnode that we actually send it, and we actually created in the create element, right? So that's what it needs there. Okay, I get that. The old vnode, yep. Here, what is the third one? A context object. Find the current context object, which is empty in this case. At least I wonder what it has. I don't know. Is the shape. What does it do? No idea. So is SVG or not? Like we said, there's a boolean here. If it is SVG, I don't know. Maybe it does something different. Excess dorm children. Fun. Excess dorm children. Yeah, I was a bit thrown off by this specific thing. I think this is what it sends most of the time, because replace node and not is hydrating both will be false, and old v node also mostly will be false. So it probably sends this. So parent dom dot child nodes. Okay, I don't fully understand. So it's parent dom dot child nodes. I don't know. Commit queue empty. I think it's like a reduce function, I think. So diff is probably somehow recursive, that it needs to like get into every part of the tree and then calculate this diff and put things in the commit queue, and which is why commit, it doesn't return a commit queue. It kind of mutates the same array, because maybe it removes stuff, maybe it adds stuff. That's what I suspect. Old DOM. I don't know the difference between old DOM and old vnode. Should be placed around likely null on first render. Can be sibling DOM element when diffing. Fragments that have siblings in most cases, it starts out as old children DOM. That's not what we send here, right? We send the replace node. The replace node, is it a V node? Is it an actual DOM node? Yeah, I'm not sure. Trees hydrating or not? Not we're in hydration. I'm actually really curious to see how it hydrates stuff too. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so we have a temporary variable and the new type, new vnode dot type. Okay, this is the one that we created when doing create element. If you remember, vnode is an object that has the type value in it. They just take the value here. When passing through create element, it assigns the object constructor as undefined. Yep, this is to prevent JSON injection. Interesting. What's JSON injection? I'm not sure, but you can still construct a new object with constructors undefined though, right? I'm not sure why this is being done. Seems like it is a guard for something. I don't know what. Okay, there seems to be some kind of a try catch, and it returns new vnode dot underscore dom. What? This does not look at the return value. Maybe it calls itself. Okay, so try outer by somebody. Yeah, it's a block name that you can use. So you can label any statement, I think. Yeah, label the statement and then you can use break or continue on that label. Yeah, which they apparently need to do here. So if Just because if you nest stuff, then break will automatically break out of the inner block and not the and if you want it to break out of the outer block, that's why I guess they've named it outer. There's probably an inner block as well, and there's probably many number of blocks that this can break out of, right? So to define that, you give it a label. So this is a label, and okay, if type of new type is a function, cool. Okay, in our case we send fragment, and that is a function, so it will probably go in here. Is there an else to this? What happens in the else? Okay, so if it's not a function, what else can it be? Okay, I don't know what else it can be. If it's not a function, it goes to diff element nodes, which comes from children, I think, right? No, diff element nodes is a function here somewhere. Diff element nodes does a bunch of stuff. Interesting. Okay, let's look at the if section today, and we'll look at the else section in the next episode, I guess. So they declare a bunch of variables. Let's see, is new, old props, old state, snapshot, clear processing, exception, dot new props is new vnode dot props. Okay, cool, those are new props. Necessary for create context API. Setting this property will pass the context value this dot context just for this component. Okay, we're reusing the TMP value to have new type dot context type. Okay, we did not set that in create element. Did we? The create element did not have context type. So context type, let provider equals temp and context of temp dot underscore id. I think that we assigned here. No. Okay. I wonder who assigns to id. The context object, this one. This is supposed to have the id. Let cctx, which is another context object. Temp object is present, that is context type is present. I'm not sure, context type, is it a string, enum, I don't know what it is. But if it is present, then provider, which is basically, no, if it's present there, then it looks for provider next. That is, this context object should have that id of the context type. Okay, this makes it seem as if it's an object. Seems like context type is an object. Okay, provider props. Okay, context will have props and value, props dot value, props dot value, else it is tmp dot underscore default value. Okay, so context is an object, so it can have underscore id, string, then it can have underscore default value, this object. So wait, if the context type is present, then it checks if provider is present, If provider is present, then it gets its props and values. Interesting. That means context object should have an ID there. So context object, does it list a bunch of providers? Maybe. Context type equals this. But context is equal to context type dot underscore id equals something that has props, that has value, this object. Maybe something like this. I guess it gets that. If TMP, when will TMP not be? Okay, if not, it's a context object. In this case, in our case, initial render, this is an empty object. I don't know if all this is useful right now. We'll just have to flow through it line by line. Okay, get the actual component. Did we create an actual component? It was null here. Cool. So this is null in case of render. So I guess I'll say this is the first render. All these missing things kind of indicates that diff is probably a recursive function where it calls itself multiple times. And when it calls itself, it gets the next v node, and that can have a component or not. In any case, we do not have any of this. We will be going in here. So here, if prototype in new type and a new type dot prototype dot render new node dot underscore component equals c equals new type new type new props cctx. Okay, so new type here is fragment. So fragment dot prototype does not have render. So I guess it's looking for a class, and this here differentiates between class. This is a class with a render method, and this is a function component. Cool. So it creates the actual component underscore component here, which is currently null, and then assigns it to C. It's interesting, right? Here they assign the old vnode component to new vnode component to C. Here they create the new component, they assign it first to C and then to the new vnode component. Does that order matter? I'm just wondering why. The goals of this project are pretty serious. It needs to be a working view library. It needs to be the smallest one out there, and it needs to be somewhat performant too, right? Trust me, this is a very small project with very few lines of code compared to what's out there for something that does the functionality of preact, right? So I'm going to assume that every line is intentional and every line is has been through multiple iterations, and it's written in a certain way because of a reason. It seems like you can create a base component. Yeah, you can create a base component and give it its constructor the type that you have sent. In this case, this will be fragment, and c dot render equals do render. What is do render? Did we import it? Where does do render come from? Oh, do render calls this dot constructor with props and context. Okay, so this dot constructor is the new type, which is fragment, which is the function. It calls that function with props and context. Okay, Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So this dot constructor is basically the function component that you have written, and this is where it calls the function. Uh, yeah, that makes sense to me at least. If provider dot sub c. Is this subscribe? I guess at some point we'll have to look at how context works itself. My cat was in the room with me and started screaming at me to get out, so I had to cut short the video right here. Let's continue with this function in the next episode. Until then, bye.